I'm going to ask Rabbi Friedman to unmute. All right. Judging by the lighting of Rabbi Friedman, I can tell this is going to be a good class. I can tell. Spotlight for everybody. All right. Rabbi Friedman, the floor is yours.
Okay. Alan, Shlomo, I got your book. I'll get back to you on it. It's really, really cute.
Ta, if you could look into the camera.
So many requirements. Okay. You may have heard the story before, but I just finished telling it to somebody, so it's fresh in my memory. The story was that I was in New York, and I went up to one of the offices near 770 in Brooklyn, where they had the Rebbe's files. And they were rearranging the room to turn the stock room into an office. So they were moving out the file cabinets. As we were moving the cabinets, a manila folder slipped out from one of the drawers. We picked it up, and it contained a single letter. The letter was from a doctor who lived in Manhattan, and it's addressed to the Rebbe on his stationery. And the doctor writes to the Rebbe that a friend of his hired a scribe and paid him to write a new Torah scroll. It's a big job. It has to be done meticulously. One wrong letter and the whole thing is useless. So it takes about a year. Before the scribe concludes or finishes the last letters, a party is made, a celebration, celebrating the completion of Torah. You invite lots of people. It's a beautiful ceremony. The new Torah is brought to the synagogue where it's going to be housed and read. All the other Torahs are brought out to greet the new Torah. It's a beautiful ceremony. So this friend of his asked the doctor if the party could be held in the doctor's apartment, because it was a larger apartment. And so it was. In middle of the party, middle of the celebration, as they were finishing the last letters of the Torah, a young woman who was among the guests suffered an aneurysm, and before the ambulance can get there, and despite the doctor's efforts, she passed away in the apartment at the party. So the doctor is writing to the Rebbe, asking, what should he tell people who are shaken by this? Can't understand how such a thing can happen. He says, my faith is okay. I'm all right. I'm fine. But what do I tell the people, particularly the students, who are asking how such a thing can happen? Then he says, also, why did it happen in my apartment? Which kind of suggests that he was not so comfortable with this whole thing happening. Right? It's like a famous story. People say, I'm okay, my friend needs to know. Somebody came to the Rebbe once and said, my friend needs to know, how do you do tshuva for committing adultery? So the Rebbe said, why didn't your friend come himself to ask? He said, well, he's obviously embarrassed. The Rebbe said, he doesn't have to be embarrassed. He can come and say that he has a friend who wants to know. So the man admitted that it was him. Anyway, so his second question was, why did it happen in my apartment? And his third question was, is the Sefer Torah still usable? Did this kind of damage the Torah? When the Rebbe answered correspondence, so many letters per day, it was almost humanly impossible. But the Rebbe was very efficient. He would write his answer on the letter that he received. So in the Rebbe's handwriting, on the doctor's stationery, was the Rebbe's answer in the margins. And the Rebbe answered in very brief points. Then the secretary would write it up in a letter form. But the points were the Rebbe's points. So that saved a lot of time. Also, the Rebbe answered in Hebrew, which is shorter than English. So we sat down to read the Rebbe's answer. There were 5 or 6 of us, I don't remember. Point number 1, the Rebbe says, why do human beings think that they can understand God's ways? Point number 2, the Torah tells us that we must try to understand God's ways. So we must try, but with a little humility. Point number 3, every person, before they're born, is given a certain amount of time to live. The angel announces how many years, how many months, how many weeks, how many days, how many minutes, and how many seconds this person who is about to be born is going to live. Point number 4, when the time comes, a person passes away according to the plan. Very rarely can a person do something so magnificent that the length of his days are extended. And very, very seldom can people do something so horrific that their life is cut short. As a rule, people live the amount of time they were given. When the time comes, it can happen under many different circumstances. A person who is in a foreign country passes away, nobody knows him, nobody cares about him, not so good. Person passes away in his bed at a ripe old age, surrounded by his family, better. Next point. In the last minutes of life, every detail becomes significant and magnified. We cannot imagine, the Rebbe writes, how meaningful it was to this young woman who could not say the Shema. You're supposed to say before you pass away. But she knew that she was passing away in a room that had a mezuzah on the door. And the mezuzah says, Shema Yisrael. That's what's written in the mezuzah. How significant is it that she passed away among friends, doctors who tried everything? How significant that her life concluded together with a Sefer Torah. So what should you tell the people who are asking? You should tell them that what they just saw is a beautiful example of divine planning, of divine providence. This woman deserved that her life should end under these positive conditions. So nothing went wrong. She was not punished for being at the party, which I guess that's what made people ask, why was it so shocking that she passed away at the party? If she passed away on the street, would be better. Why was that so shocking? Those who were asking, did they actually believe that she died because she was at the party? Like some kind of a weird punishment? So we were sitting there marveling at the clarity of vision. Why do we think so negatively about everything when the truth is beautiful? There's more. Then the Rebbe writes, in fact, according to the teachings of the Baal Shem Tov, why did your friend decide to write a Torah? Where did that thought come from? Very few people do that. The reason your friend decided to write a Torah is so that this woman would have the merit of passing away at that party. It was all planned, divinely orchestrated. Concerning why it happened in your apartment, the Rebbe writes, you're a doctor. It's your mission in life to heal those that can be healed and to comfort those who are passing away. Usually you do it at the hospital. This time it happened in your apartment. But why your apartment? Because you're a doctor. Calm down. And concerning the Sefer Torah, there is absolutely nothing wrong with the Sefer Torah. So we were sitting there, the six of us, or five of us, and we were just marveling. It explains so much. It makes everything so clear. And the phone rang. There was a rabbi on the other end of the phone, panicked. He could hardly speak. He says, I need you to ask the Rebbe something for me. I'm in the middle of a bar mitzvah for my son. My father came in from Israel to be at the bar mitzvah, and he collapsed and died right here at the party. I have 400 guests. What am I supposed to do? What am I supposed to say? This was before there were faxes. So we read him the letter. And he went and repeated it to his guests. And every one of them was inspired. So now we're sitting there marveling at this second part of the story. This letter was 15 years old. And suddenly it slips out. The only letter that slipped out. And then we looked at each other and we said, Who decided to move the furniture? And why? That room never became an office. It remained the stockroom. The whole plan of moving, and it was just for that letter to fall out so that we could tell it to this rabbi whose son's bar mitzvah was traumatized by, right? And instead of being traumatized, all the guests went home inspired. An incredible story. So let's think a minute. What is divine providence? Does God really have to pay attention to every detail, to what's happening at every party, everywhere in the world, at all times, to make sure that the girl doesn't pass away in the wrong environment? And really, that's what God is busy with. God knew that this rabbi would need to have an inspiring message for his guests, so he put it into somebody's mind to move furniture in the Rebbe's, and that letter falls out of all letters, and nothing else fell out. This was all God's thinking. God planned it. This is how it's going to happen. Why would we assume that God is so focused on these details? I wouldn't call it petty, but tiny. Every human being everywhere in the world, God has that kind of a plan and that kind of a vision and that kind of detailed attention. Not that it's impossible for God, but how can we be sure that that's the case? The Baal Shem Tov put a great emphasis on this concept, that divine providence is particular divine providence, not a general oversight, but a particular individual attention to the tiny details. In fact, the Baal Shem Tov said that when a leaf that had fallen from a tree is moved by the wind from one side of the street to another, from one location to another, the movement of every leaf is with a plan. God orchestrates the movement of the leaves in the fall when there are millions of them all over the street. None of them moves without a purpose, without a particular plan. So there's a reason why this leaf went there, this leaf went there. Everything has a purpose. What is the Baal Shem Tov saying? He's saying, of course we know God created trees. God created the wind. God created the seasons. During the fall season, leaves fall off the tree. When the wind blows, it's stronger than the leaf, so it will carry the leaf. So divine providence is that God makes it a windy day. Does he really have to pay attention to each leaf? So if the wind is blowing, that's divine providence, and then automatically the leaves move. So the Baal Shem Tov said no. There is no automatic consequence. Every movement, every event must have its own divine providence. In other words, one event does not piggyback on another. God made it windy, so the leaves were moved. No. The wind does not move leaves. God moves leaves. How do we know this for sure? The answer very simply is God is creating the leaf, not just the wind. At every moment, God is creating the leaf. Because if God stops creating the leaf, there would be no leaf. In other words, nothing exists automatically on automatic pilot. At every moment, God is creating that leaf. He's saying, let there be this leaf. Well, if he's creating it at that moment, then obviously he's paying attention to it. And if it's precious enough for him to create it, then it is precious enough for him to determine where it should go, whether it should go. So creation and divine providence are really one and the same. And that's why it's important to know. There is a pandemic, like a big wind. And because of this big wind, leaves are being blown all over the place. No, leaves are not being blown all over the place. Every leaf goes where it needs to be, where God needs it to be. Same is true with a pandemic. A pandemic is raging. It's killing people. No, 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 no. Nobody is dying because a pandemic is out of control. That cannot happen in God's world. Can't happen. So nobody is going to die needlessly. Nobody's going to die accidentally. No one is going to die incidentally. You know, you get in the way of the wind, it knocks you over. Shouldn't have been there. No. And the proof is, look at families. One person gets the virus, the other does not. They live side by side. So you can try to explain it, the immune system, one person's immune system was stronger than the other. And why is that? Who arranged that? So it's very clear. Nobody dies because there's a pandemic. People can die by the pandemic. Cause of death, but that's not why they died. They died because it was their time, because that was the lifespan they were given. And we can assume that they died knowing this. Because in the final hours of life, people become very smart, very wise. They see very clearly. Doesn't mean they like it, but they're not confused. They do not think they're dying for nothing. So we shouldn't cheapen life by thinking that a person's life can end simply because he was in the wrong place at the wrong time. So here's a final thought. In all of creation, there is nothing higher than a human being. We're at the top of the totem pole, which means there is nothing more significant, nothing more powerful than the life of a human being. Therefore, there is nothing in nature which is lower than the human being that can cause a human being to die. No force in nature is stronger than a human life. We have to know this. So nothing in nature can cause death of a human. Only the Creator, who is higher than the human, only the Creator can decide when a person should be born and when a person should pass away. Other than that, we are more powerful than anything else in nature. Even another human being, by accident, cannot cause another person's death. That's what we mean when we say life is sacred. So to think that a human being's life was ended by an accident, by an animal, by a virus, by a doctor's mistake, never, never, never. We have too much respect for life to cheapen it that way. Is that reason to be optimistic? In case we need more reason to be optimistic? I remember how we were sitting there stunned after reading the Rebbe's letter. So brief, concise, to the point, and eye-opening and mind-blowing. And then once you hear it and once you understand it, it's like, yeah, sure. Of course. Makes a lot of sense. Intuitively sounds right. Why didn't we see it? Why is our vision so clouded with negativity? So just as a footnote, there was a chassid who came from Israel to be with the Rebbe for Yom Kippur. He was a special man, and he was honored to open the ark for Kol Nidre. On his way to the ark, he collapsed and died in the synagogue on Yom Kippur, in the presence of the Rebbe and the whole congregation, on his way to the ark. You know, when a soul comes to heaven, one of the first things they ask is, what were you doing when you died? Where are you coming from? I can imagine there can be some pretty embarrassing circumstances where the soul would, I'd rather not say. But when this man passed away on Yom Kippur, all the old people in the shul, his peers, they were all jealous. And I said, well, how did he pull that one off? How did he arrange that? When they ask him in heaven, where are you coming from? I'm coming from 770. I was at the Rebbe's synagogue in the Rebbe's minyan. It was Yom Kippur. I was on my way to the Ark, and all of a sudden I'm in heaven. Not shabby. But there was another incident, and during Simchas Torah, during the dancing, an elderly chassid passed away. And all the old folk, they said, what? That's even better. You danced your way straight into heaven. Can imagine when he gets to heaven and they ask him, where are you coming from? He says, I was in the middle of dancing. And they would say, well, then don't stop. Finish what you were doing. And he dances right into heaven. So the last minutes, everything becomes significant. So to that girl, knowing that there's a mezuzah on the door, she was surrounded by people who cared at a holy event, took her straight into heaven. And yet we are so benighted, we are so short-sighted. People actually say, oh, why would that happen? That's terrible. How can we look at beauty and see ugliness? We need enlightenment. And the Rebbe was very generous. He's still enlightening people. So what's the good news, folk? Who has really good news? Of course, after that story, all news is good news. But something unusual, something outstanding. Anybody? Has it been a good week? Corey?
I bought the Tanakh, a new Bible.
Who is that by? Art Scroll?
Yeah. Stone Edition, the Jewish Bible, Art Scroll series. And I'm reading it, and it's very informational.
It's a good translation.
And it counts as a blessing too.
Having a holy book in the house is a blessing.
And so I'm reading the Torah now, and in the beginning and stuff, and I've gotten up to Joseph where he was thrown in the well, and now he's saving his brothers. And each page I read is a blessing, because you're reading the Torah.
Yep. Just having it in your house, even before you read it, is already a blessing. It brings holiness to the house.
Excellent. Just before we go on, Ty, I did want to mention that somebody contacted me. They are a screenwriter, and they want to make a movie out of one of your lectures. Which lecture do you think they like the most to make a movie out of? It was this story.
You're serious?
Yeah. they're writing this story, and they want to sell it, they want to create it, and they say there's a lot of nuances, and there's a lot of characters, and a lot of people, and a lot going on. They want to see if they can figure out how to make a film out of this story.
Wow.
So we'll see what happens.
Wow. Speaking of films, Corey, if you want to see a statue of Joseph, to see what he looked like, look up the film called Patterns of Evidence.
I'm not sure if Corey was there, but we had a presentation by the maker,
Right.
by the creator,
Producers, yep.
Tim Mahoney.
Very nice.
Joanne, are you ready?
Yes. Good evening, Rabbi Friedman. Thank you for your sharing. I have some questions here, and the first one is in a lot of your videos on YouTube, you mentioned that the world is getting better, and my question is, how do you define better, and can the world be better than what it was like in the beginning, which was created perfect by God? And what kind of a world would Mashiach would want to live? And for Gentiles, do Gentiles have responsibility to change the world to be a better place too? That's my first question. Sorry.
Let's see. Can Gentiles make the world worse?
I mean, do Gentiles also have the responsibilities to make this world a better place before
Yes.
Mashiach come?
Yes. Because if you can make it worse, you can certainly make it better.
At the beginning, God created this world perfect.
Well, God created it perfect as the setting for something magnificent to happen. It's the perfect world for God to live in it. But God is not yet living in it because there are people who are denying him, unaware of him, spiting him. So it's our job to make God comfortable in his perfect creation.
And you mentioned the lowest world. But at the beginning, there were no humans. So the lowest world was the world he created. Was
Yes.
it?
And in that lowest world, animals were killing animals. You know, plants died when the season. So it is the lowest world. It's a world where things can go either way, either towards life or towards death. So we have to fix that. Get rid of death.
So you said that even before the flood in the Noah's time, the animals killed animals. Even
yes,
before
nature is not all good.
Okay.
It works perfect, but it's not good. Goodness. Only human beings can bring goodness.
I see. Yeah, there are lots for me to learn. Thank you, Rabbi. And I have another question. It's about reincarnation. Because in one of your video, you mentioned that it will take like at least 40 years for a soul to be reincarnated. But if a baby was killed by an accident, let's say the baby only lived in this world for like 1 or 2 months, and it doesn't seem like he has had any mission completed. So does it still take 40 years for him to be reincarnated?
It is very possible that living for 1 month was its entire mission.
What's the entire mission? So
a month of life is very significant. An hour of life is significant. I mean, think about the repercussions. A child is born, lives for a month, and then passes away as if nothing happened. Oh, so much happened. So many people were affected. So many lives were changed just by this tiny month-old baby. So it's very possible that it had fulfilled its mission.
So it's also possible that the baby will go to heaven, like he's already completed all his mission. It's also possible.
Yeah, for sure. Babies always go to heaven.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Rabbi. That's
In
my
fact,
question.
you know how babies smell delicious? You know that baby smell, the newborn baby? That is the smell of heaven. So if a baby passes away 1 month old, he never even got rid of the smell yet. He's gone back immediately.
Yeah.
But let me ask you something. OU, is that your name or are you kosher?
Really? That's a kosher sign? I don't know. That's my last name. That's my legal last name.
That
I'm
is
a Chinese.
beautiful.
Yeah, I'm a Chinese. I live in Toronto now. But I believed, like I become a Christian 10 years ago after I immigrated to Canada. I grew up in China, so my background is like a communism, but not anymore after I became a Christian. But I still have a lot of questions when I read the Christian Bible.
Yeah.
And so I just find your videos on YouTube, and a lot of the videos I have to say saved my life.
Whoa.
Yeah, so
How do you
very
pronounce your name?
just O,
Oh,
right?
yes. OU is the symbol of kosher,
Really?
one of the most popular symbols of kosher.
Oh, interesting.
And also, you didn't become a Christian. Nobody becomes a Christian. You're practicing Christianity. You're living it, but you're you. Or O.
Thank you, Rabbi.
By the way, that is good news. Saved your life? Can't have better news than that. Thank you.
It seems that it's my turn. Hi, Rabbi. My name is Hannah. I'm new. I want to thank you. All your videos has been really amazing for me. I'm convert. So there is so many ideas that I'm still trying to change my way to think about, to have that Jewish mind. And
Where are you from?
I'm from Colombia, South America. And it has been a long path to walk until I found that my place is to be Jewish. But it was a really long searching from
Where did
Catholic.
where did your family come from to Colombia?
They were from the frontier between Spain and Portugal.
You know what I'm driving at?
Yes, actually, after I started to do the conversion course and trying to find a gear, I discovered that my grandpa, pattern line, was Jewish, but we didn't know. And yes, as more I has been studying, for example, halacha, I discovered that my grandma manners and the way that they educated us has so many things to relate it with Judaism. So I think they were Jewish also. I don't know if they know, but I'm here now.
So welcome home.
Yes, it has been so
Welcome
nice.
back.
Thank you. And thank you for your teachings. I have so many questions, but maybe for the main thing for me that I would like to ask you is, at the beginning, before doing the conversion, I traveled to Israel, because at the beginning I really felt that I found my place, and then I started to struggle because many things were confusing, and I traveled before doing the gear because I wanted to see the root. And in that time, I used to say real Jewish in action. And when I went there, I just feel at home. And I understood that that's my place. And I began in this dream to live there. But it has been 6 years ago. My conversion was 6 years ago. And many things happened. And then I started to study more and more the Rabbi's teachings. And now I feel that I have to be here, trying to grow and try to reveal light. But I'm a struggle. And I don't know how to know what is my place or what is my mission if I have to go there because I want my son. My older son is in Israel already. He's 19. But the another one is 14. And we are here, and Jewish life is not that rich and it's not easy. And I'm struggling, trying to look better education and Jewish environment for him and move to Israel, or to stay here and try to discover my Jewish mission here. And I don't know how to.
Where is here?
Colombia, Cali.
You're still in Colombia?
Yes.
Do you know the Chabad rabbi there?
Yes, I live in his same building.
Rabbi Rosenfeld?
Huh?
Rabbi Rosenfeld?
No, he's in Bogota. He's the father of the Rebbetzin, Eslomim, Yehuda Eslomim.
So where in Colombia are you?
Cali.
Uh-huh.
It's a small town. We are only 600. There is no Jewish school here.
Yes, I understand.
Kosher is difficult. For example, I'm trying to change to Alaha Chabad with the kosher, but it's impossible to find kosher here in that level. So sometimes I don't know how to decide what will be the better for me and for my son. Sometimes I just want to do Aliyah like right now, and sometimes I hesitate and I don't know how to discover which is the best or what does Hashem wants from me or the Rebbe.
Is education available in Bogota?
Yes and not. It is, but it seems that it's not quite frum, observant. I don't know how to say that. The boys and the girls are not following that much mitzvot, and it's more kind of assimilated. I asked that question to the Chabad Rebbetzin because I was really worried about it. And she told me, I don't think that you are going to find that much difference. So in that moment, I decided to wait
So it sounds like you should make Aliyah.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
Ask the rabbi where in Israel you should go
Sit down.
and what connections he can give you.
Okay.
You don't just walk in lost, overwhelmed.
Yeah, it's not easy to try to grow up a kid here without more Jewish kids.
Yeah.
Because he's the only one that is going to Shabbos. He's the only one eating kosher. He's the only one, you know.
Yeah.
There is some kids in the community, but he's the only one trying to keep it.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. I will ask and I will let you know. Say
Only
hi.
good news.
Amen.
Go ahead, Blake.
Yeah. Okay, I see. So are we sharing good news or are we doing questions? Either. I guess I'll start with good news. Maybe it'll lead to questions. There was, sometimes I guess maybe this is the question. Sometimes Rabbi, how do you distinguish between when something is, now I've asked you this before, and before you've said sometimes the fears that we have are not actually ours. And that was important. But then sometimes I wonder, like I had a decision that I had to make in the last week. There was somebody who was a person I knew through, he was doing gardening for my family. He was cutting trees. He cut some trees for us. We had some trees. And he, I guess the issue is that I just had a feeling about it that I couldn't necessarily distinguish between whether it was fear of working with him more, because he was kind of very aggressive about wanting to have a friendship with me, and then wanting to work together and to go into business together, and wanting to hang out. And then I would spend some time with him, and different things that he would say, I just became kind of wary. And so something came up with what I do. I'm a realtor, and I'm just starting off, and he was asking me how it was going, and I said, thank God it's going well. And he said he was looking for something. So he started looking for something. He asked if I'd help him. I helped him. He became very like spearheading the whole thing, very kind of aggressively. So then I helped him find something to buy. I helped him find a house to buy, and he wanted to buy it, but through someone else. And so as I learned more about how and why he was doing that, I just became really uncomfortable with it. So I wasn't sure if I was overstepping my own boundaries and taking on responsibility for something that didn't belong to me, because my job is to help people buy houses or sell houses, and that's it. But how do you know when you're, how do you know when you're doing something that you're taking on something that doesn't belong to you and isn't yours to think about it versus not? That is one question that was embedded in this. I think what happened was I started actually physically getting everything, like you were saying earlier about divine providence. I had changed my diet leading up to this, and as a result, I was having a lot of difficulty digesting my food, such that I became, what do you say, incontinent? No, something like that. I'm trying to be polite about it, but I couldn't go to the bathroom, and it lasted to the point where, at the culmination of making a decision about putting in an offer on this house, I was in a lot of discomfort. I was like in pain, and I realized you know, there was no way I could do it. You know, I like was no way to get relief from the pain. And I tried all these different things until I decided that, okay, I'm going to do this. And there was some connection in my mind that these things were related, that there was something that I was not allowing to move through. And so I made the decision to not work with this person. I wanted to make sure I got nothing from it. So I gave it to somebody else. And then I guess looking back on it now, I wonder, how do you think about decisions in whether what you're doing in the negative feelings that you're responding to are, how do you differentiate between the sides that are your ego making, you know, maybe you're manipulating yourself, or whether you're doing something good?
Well, in this case, you made the right decision. It was causing you a lot of anxiety, which messes up your digestion. But you must trust your instincts. They're healthy. So take this as a lesson. What your instincts were telling you were right all along, and you should have trusted them before you got anxious, or without having to get anxious. Trust your instincts. If it feels uncomfortable, stay away. It's the right way, the wiser way of going. So something feels uncomfortable, then there's something wrong with it. Stay away. Trust your instincts.
Isn't this the main conflict between Joseph and his brothers, where Joseph said, we're going to go out into the world and it's dangerous, and his brothers said, yeah, but we'll lose ourselves, or we'll lose our Judaism, we'll lose our identity?
They were both right. He could do it and they could not. They knew they couldn't. He knew that he could. They each trusted their instincts. And they were right. So no need to confuse things, complicate things. If your instinct says no, then it's no.
Thanks.
Hi, Rabbi Friedman. Earlier in the class, you mentioned we're allotted, years, days, hours, down to the seconds, as far as how long we're going to live. Unless we do something so extraordinary, we'll live longer, or so evil, we'll live less. So why do we daven for Orech Yamim? For example, like in Birchat HaChodesh, we daven for Orech Yamim.
It doesn't mean extended past our lifespan. It means days full of meaning and accomplishment. Not more days. The days themselves should be long and fruitful.
Mm-hmm.
So it's more of a qualitative rather than quantitative.
Okay, interesting.
But you always have good news. What's your good news for this week?
What's my good news? First of all, I don't know if you could see it. L'chaim, your cups are amazing. I bought a couple of them and I gave them as gifts. And I have more requests for them. So they're really nice. I don't know if you can see. It says it's good to know. And on the other side, it says, this too shall pass. It only gets better from here. And I think everybody needs to see that when they have their cup of joe in the morning or their tea in the evening. It's very, very inspiring. And it's a beautiful color too.
That's good news for us. What's the good news for you?
Oh, Ari got an 87 on his Gemara test. I was very happy about that. He was home for Shabbos. I didn't see him much, but he was home for Shabbos, so that was nice. I think that's about it.
That's an impressive score.
Oh, and I've been saying the entire Tehillim on Friday nights, and sometimes it's just like, only one time I had like a little struggle. I don't know, I had to get something to drink and continue on, but I can tell at the beginning, for some reason, sometimes it just flows, and it just, I don't know, it's just like a calming water, and I can do it. I mean, for me, 3 hours is like a good time, because I'm very, very particular that I say every nukudah the right way. If I think I said it the wrong way, I'm like on the next line, I said, no, I don't know if I said that word on the line above, and like I'll go over it to make sure that I say, every nukudah properly. And then when I'm finished with it, I'm like, yo, I'm very happy.
For good reason.
Yeah.
Beautiful. I knew you had some good news.
Yep.
Adam, go ahead.
Rabbi, good evening. How are you?
Good evening, Chief. How are you?
Thank God. Thank God. A few weeks ago, I was talking to Zalman. I mentioned something to him, and I wanted to ask you also. You know how life seems to move faster as you get older? Do you agree or no?
It's a matter of constitution. Some people's constitution makes time move faster and some move slower. But faster is better. It means you're excited.
So I had just a thought on that. I was wondering, some people, I guess, as you get older, life gets a little heavier, or it has potential to. So whatever, I just wanted to hear if you had anything in your box of knowledge about that.
I don't think you're that age for things to start slowing down. You've got a good couple of years for things to speed up. Then they'll slow down.
No, I'm not worried about it slowing down. It just, I remember being a kid in life. One day of school took forever, and now before you know it, it's Shabbos again.
That's just the nature of school.
Thank you.
We do one more question.
Here.
Hi, Rabbi. Could you hear me? Hello?
Yeah.
Oh. Yeah, I was wondering, is a Sefer Torah written in Ketav Ivri kosher?
What is Ksav Ivri?
It's mentioned in the Gemara. There's 3 different opinions on it, but the English term would be Paleo Hebrew. It's the older script.
I'm not sure, but probably not.
All right.
Ksav Ashurit is the one that we use for the Torah.
Yes.
Are you a scribe?
No, but I'm interested in that. I mean, because it would have Kabbalistic, implications, because in the current script, the Aleph, for instance, is a Vav and 2 Yuds, and then the Gematria is the same as Hashem's name, and then in Paleo Hebrew, there would be none of that, and also the Tag wouldn't be there. But it seems once you go back early enough in terms of all the archaeological records, it's all in Paleo Hebrew. So yeah.
Maybe that was just the script, the handwritten It was not the formal letters.
I mean, in the Gemara, one of the opinions is that it was always the current script, and then another opinion is that it was originally the current script, then changed to the Paleo-Hebrew, and then Ezra changed it back to the current script. And then there's a third opinion that the original was Paleo-Hebrew. So it's in Sanhedrin and Megillah. They talk about it in Talmud.
So it sounds like the conclusion is that it has to be written Ashurit.
I mean, I think so. I mean, and that's obviously what everyone does, but like...
Yes, and for the very reason you gave, because of the meaning that each letter has. That is actually the creative force with which God created the world. So the really interesting question is, on the 10 Commandments, what lettering did they use?
I mean, yeah, that's one of the things they discuss in the Gemara, because I mean, there's a midrash that says it went all the way through to the other side. So then, I mean, that would matter for like a samach, because then in the middle, that piece of stone would have to be held up by like a miracle. But in Paleo Hebrew, it would be an ayin that would be being held up from the miracle. So I mean, yeah, more stuff there.
You know what it means that it went through and through?
Like, there's a midrash that the letter was engraved all the way through the stone. So,
but what would happen if you did that is that from the back of the stone, you would see the letter backwards.
Yeah.
But that's not what happened. You could read the letter straight on both sides.
Mm-hmm.
The idea being that the Torah doesn't have a back. It's all God's face. There's no back. Which is, otherworldly. Not within nature. But Torah is not within nature. Torah is higher than nature. Let's do one more.
Vivian, are you there?
Yeah. So, Rabbi, I just wanted to ask a question. I was thinking about just like how like Jewish people were more prepared, like to go through life and knowing like there was going to be struggles. Hashem like warned the Jewish people, like this is all the bad things that are going to happen, and then here's all the good. So kind of like took crises much better than I think most other people. And I don't know, I was just wondering like about how Cain, like Hashem knew that Cain was going to kill Abel. Like, why did he wait until after he killed him to tell him that he could overcome sin, and like not tell him that before? I mean, is that, I don't know. I feel like that, I don't know, kind of doesn't make sense. Like,
why didn't he tell him before he committed the sin?
I mean, yeah, that he was capable of overcoming it. Like he like that, like he said, like sin is crouching at your door, but if you like master it, you can overcome it. So why didn't he tell him that before he did it? Like, if there's sin ever coming at your door, you can overcome it.
Yeah. Well, it wouldn't really make sense to tell someone who has never sinned, if you sin, you can overcome it. Don't sin. It's only after he sinned that he needed to know what tshuva was.
Oh, okay. So it's about tshuva. That's what.
So he learned about tshuva when he needed it, not before he needed it.
Okay. Okay, so I was thinking about it completely differently. I was interpreting it differently, I guess. I was thinking that it was mastering, like, yeah, the sin, but also like the before the sin happens, like kind of mastering our own, like controlling ourselves, like.
Right. So now, after that experience, we are forewarned. We now know before we sin that we're capable of controlling ourselves, and that we have the strength to do the right thing, and that if we do the wrong thing, there's a way of correcting and fixing it. So we benefited from Cain's experience.
Right. Yeah.
So, you can ask the question a little differently. Whatever Cain did, and whatever God said to him after he killed his brother, why is it written in the Torah? Why do we need to know it?
I don't know.
Because it benefits us.
Right.
We know in
everybody has
advance.
civil rivalry.
Right. So we benefit from his experience, as we benefit from every experience that our ancestors went through. It's all helpful to us in a very practical way.
Do you think that's what helps, like, the Jewish people get through crises and hard times better than I'm just making, like, my own personal assumption is that that they get through crises better than a lot of other groups of people in the world. Like I heard a lecture about you talking about in Israel, the divorce rate is less, and in other countries it's more during this COVID crisis. So there, like how Jews handle crises maybe differently. And you think do you think that that's because we're connected to our history better?
It's in our DNA because of those experiences of our ancestors. For example, the story with Jonah and the whale.
Mm-hmm.
When the people on the ship said, "We have to throw you overboard to save the ship," Jonah said, "Go ahead. I'm not afraid of water. My people went through the sea when it split." In other words, what lasting effect do we still have today because our ancestors experienced the splitting of the sea? What lasting effect do we have today from the fact that our ancestors were slaves and came out of slavery? We are not afraid of slavery. Throughout all of history, wherever Jews lived, that country could easily have enslaved them again. Spain could have enslaved the Jews. Persia could have enslaved the Jews. Babylonia could have enslaved the Jews. Germany could have enslaved Poland. And yet we were never afraid. We don't live in fear of slavery because we've been there, we've overcome it, it's out of our system.
Right.
That's a lasting effect.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Rabbi.
Ancestors went through, and God tells us to commemorate it, it's because it's still affecting us. So we observe Pesach because it's keeping us strong against slavery. We celebrate Purim because it keeps us strong against the threat of genocide. And we celebrate Hanukkah because it keeps us safe from the fear of being violated. So we're definitely standing on the shoulders of giants. And much of our resilience comes from that. In a sense, collectively, we've been there, we've done that, you're not scaring me anymore. That's our introduction to Purim that is coming up very soon. It has been a pleasure as always. And next week will be even a greater pleasure. Because as the world gets better, there is more good news and there's more pleasure to life. So enjoy. The ship is going in the right direction. Just enjoy the ride.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rabbi.